Ancient Egyptian civilization ranks among the oldest and most mysterious in human history. Settled along the banks of the Nile, this remarkable people developed a civilization, knowledge system, architecture, religion, and social order that astonished the world. The Egyptians firmly believed in preserving the body after death, to ensure the soul could return and inhabit it again, which is why they became masters of the art of mummification. According to their belief, the body's preservation was essential, so the soul would not perish and could journey to the afterlife. That is why they developed special techniques to preserve corpses and place them in beautifully crafted wooden or stone coffins for burial. During the reigns of the 21st and 22nd dynasties, roughly between 1070 BCE and 712 BCE, the art of mummification reached its peak. It was in this era that the mummy of a woman, known as Bakht Hor-Nekhti, was discovered, in a stunningly well-preserved state. What made this mummy particularly fascinating was her elaborately decorated coffin, which featured religious symbols and scenes of deities carved into it. This mummy remained sealed inside her coffin for over 3,000 years until modern science, particularly advanced CT scanning, finally offered experts a chance to unlock her secrets. Bakht Hor-Nekhti's body first gained attention when researchers observed the remarkable state of her skeletal structure and linen wrappings. According to Egyptian historians, women of her time who belonged to higher social classes were treated with the highest respect even after death. It is believed that Bakht Hor-Nekhti was a member of a religious or high-ranking family. Her coffin, crafted from valuable wood, contained hieroglyphic inscriptions and artwork describing ancient Egyptian beliefs that granted great significance to life after death. The coffin of Bakht Hor-Nekhti featured especially prominent images of the god Anubis, who was considered the guardian and protector of the dead. This highlights how deeply the Egyptians believed in protecting the deceased. Hieroglyphic inscriptions on her coffin included her name, lineage, and various prayers for the forgiveness of her soul and her success in the afterlife. When modern archaeologists used high-resolution CT scanning, they discovered detailed images of the inside of her body. These scans revealed that her internal organs had been removed and replaced with carefully arranged linen bundles, reflecting the distinctive embalming techniques of that period. Her dental condition suggested she had eaten good quality food during her lifetime, since her teeth showed little damage, though there were minor scratches and signs of pressure on some of her bones, possibly due to aging or routine physical labor. In ancient Egypt, women sometimes held remarkably high social status. The grandeur of Bakht Hor-Nekhti's coffin testifies that she did not belong to the lower or enslaved classes, but instead held a respected position. Floral motifs, shimmering golden tones, and traces of fragrant substances on her coffin all spoke of her refined standing in society. Some experts conducted a 3D facial reconstruction of her face, sparking debate about whether her racial features align more closely with African groups or native Egyptian families. Because Egypt at that time was a hub of international trade, with people from Africa, Asia, and Europe traveling through, there was often a mingling of racial traits. However, experts still require further DNA analysis to reach definitive conclusions about her ancestry. The ancient Egyptians believed that the more valuable goods, jewelry, and fragrances a person took with them to the tomb, the more prosperous they would be in the afterlife. That is why some traces of gold jewelry were also discovered with Bakht Hor-Nekhti. Although certain items had likely been stolen over the centuries, small figurines known as shabtis were placed near the coffin. These were meant to serve the deceased in the afterlife. These shabtis were inscribed with spells instructing them to work for the tomb owner whenever commanded. Research on Bakht Hor-Nekhti's mummy also illuminated social structures of ancient Egypt. At that time, the priestly class and the royal family maintained a close relationship. It is possible Bakht Hor-Nekhti belonged to a priestly family, since religious symbols on her coffin were unusually prominent. In addition, her body was preserved using herbal oils and special salt mixtures whose scents can still be detected around the mummy even today. Experts estimate that she died between the ages of 35 and 40, a reasonable lifespan for that era, since epidemics and poor healthcare often shorten people's lives. Yet the sturdiness of her bones and her overall health indicated she had received good care. CT scans also revealed that her heart had been left intact within the body, unlike other organs, which were removed and stored in canopic jars buried nearby. This was consistent with Egyptian beliefs, which held that the heart must remain in place, so it could be weighed on the day of judgment, determining the person's worthiness to enter the afterlife. Bakht-hor-Nekhti's mummy amazed the world. Because of its exceptional preservation, CT scanning showed no injuries or signs of surgical intervention in her skull, suggesting she died of natural causes. Residues of aromatic oils and scented resins found on her skin further confirmed that her body had been ritually washed and purified before burial. Following ancient religious customs, some scholars compared this mummy with other prominent Egyptian women, such as Hatshepsut or Nitocris. But despite relatively limited documentation about Bakht-hor-Nekhti, her coffin and the extraordinary preservation of her remains earned her global recognition. Among the items found with her were small fragments of fabric, wooden utensils, and copper jewelry, reflecting the lifestyle of Egypt's middle and upper classes. These artifacts suggest that although she was not directly royal, she certainly held a privileged position. The location of her tomb also implied that she was buried near a major city, which was a center for religious activity during her lifetime. On the inner walls of the tomb, there were excerpts from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, intended to guide the soul through the dangers of the afterlife and help the deceased reach paradise. Greek and Roman historians, such as Herodotus in the 5th century BC, were also fascinated by Egyptian mummification. Herodotus described in his writings how the brain was extracted with specialized tools, and how salts and perfumes were packed into the body. When Bakht-hor-Nekhti's mummy was finally studied with 21st century technology, it gave the world its first close look at the health, society, and religious beliefs of a person who had died 3,000 years ago. This research not only offered a glimpse of ancient Egypt, but also revealed humanity's timeless hope for life beyond death, a hope that still resonates today. Part 2 in American English. The modern research on Bakht-hor-Nekhti's mummy extended far beyond just the examination of her body. Experts also carefully studied the burial site, the tomb's architecture, and the objects found there. The tomb's design reflected traditional ancient Egyptian funerary architecture, with an upper section for visitors and relatives to offer prayers and tributes, and a sealed lower chamber for the safe preservation of the mummy. Bakht-hor-Nekhti's tomb followed the same principle, with her coffin protected by heavy stone blocks. The elaborate care Egyptians took for the dead is powerful evidence of how deeply they valued life after death, often to the point of spending much of their life's wealth preparing for the hereafter. Bakht-hor-Nekhti's mummy was surrounded by precious items like scented oils, grains, cloth, and jewelry to ensure her needs would be met in the next world. Archaeologists discovered small figurines near her tomb that most likely represented the goddess Hathor. In ancient Egypt, Hathor was the goddess of joy, fertility, music, and maternal love. Names like Bakht-hor-Nekhti often included references to Hathor, suggesting the deceased hoped for her protection. Other figurines probably depicted Osiris, the god of the afterlife, whose presence symbolized forgiveness and divine acceptance. When experts compared artifacts from her tomb to other sites, they found that the paintings decorating her burial chamber were made with especially fine colors. Blue, red, and gold were considered sacred in ancient Egypt. Blue symbolized the life-giving waters of the Nile and renewal. Red signified power and protection, while gold represented eternity and the radiance of the gods. The generous use of these colors in Bakht-hor-Nekhti's tomb showed her elevated status, Some of the scenes painted inside showed backed horn-necked standing with the god Anubis, indicating the moment she was presenting her heart for judgment. According to Egyptian belief, this was known as the weighing of the heart ceremony, in which the person's heart was measured against the feather of Maat, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter, the soul was judged worthy and allowed to pass into paradise. If heavier, the soul faced punishment. Details of this ritual are described in the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, excerpts of which were also written on the walls of Bakhtur-Necht's tomb. These spell-like texts were intended to protect the deceased from the dangers of the afterlife and guide her safely to eternal peace. Experts also uncovered tools near the site, believed to have been used for the mummification process. Among them were sharp bronze knives for extracting the brain, and small wooden hammers for securing linen wrappings. The design of these tools suggests that the embalmers were highly trained professionals who combined religious ritual with anatomical skill, as the preservation of the body was considered a sacred art. Modern scientific testing identified the substances used in her mummification. They included frankincense, myrrh, cedar oils, and natron salt, which helped destroy bacteria inside the body. There were also resinous substances whose fragrance still lingers. Today, proof of how skillfully the ancient Egyptians understood aromatics and their preservation power. Detailed analysis of her teeth was also revealing. Bakhtur-Necht's teeth were remarkably well preserved, suggesting she had eaten soft, high-quality foods and belonged to a prosperous family. In contrast, the poor of that era often suffered from tooth decay due to coarse bread and unrefined grains. Her good dental condition offered a glimpse of her higher social standing. CT scans of her skull showed the brain had been removed through the nose using traditional Egyptian methods. Afterward, her head was filled with special oils to prevent decay, a perfect combination of spiritual and medical thinking, ensuring she would remain whole for eternity. It is still astonishing to experts that, after 3,000 years, the colors and carvings on her coffin remain so vibrant. Egyptian artisans used mineral pigments combined with natural gum, creating paint that hardened over time like stone, resisting moisture and insects. That is why even today, their brilliance has survived. Ongoing genetic studies aim to determine Bakhtur-Necht's ancestry. Some theories suggest she may have had roots in East Africa, while others believe she was of purely Egyptian descent. Since Egypt was a global trade hub at the time, intermixing of different peoples was common. Inscriptions around her burial shams suggest she may have been known as a singer or musician. Many Egyptian women served as sacred musicians in temples, and images of musical instruments in her tomb further support this possibility. Such priestly musicians were respected in Egyptian society and were often granted special burials. The refinement of Bakhtur-Necht's tomb, its precious colors, fragrances, and jewelry all point to a woman of significant cultural and social rank. When Western archaeologists first found her mummy, they saw it simply as an ancient curiosity. But as research progressed, Bakhtur-Necht's mummy turned into a living testimony of history, proving that ancient cultures were not only masters of architecture and religious rites, but also of advanced embalming and preservation techniques. Bakhtur-Necht's story also teaches us how humans have always maintained a deep connection to the idea of life after death, trying to carry their identity with them into eternity. Today, as experts scan her body, they can observe her heart, lungs, teeth, and bones almost as though examining a living person. An incredible fact. Scholars hope to soon study the chemical formulas of the paints used on her coffin, so they can rediscover the methods of these ancient artists. They are also analyzing the silk-like threads found in her clothing, which might have been dyed using pigments imported from foreign lands, revealing clues about Egypt's far-reaching trade network. This mummy is a symbol that a human being is never truly gone. Their story, their art, and their culture can live on for thousands of years. Bakhtur-Necht's 3,000-year-old mummy is still being studied in museums worldwide, offering fresh insights every day. Ancient Egyptians have shown us that preserving memory was essential to them, and their commitment to maintaining the human body and its legacy is being revealed today. Thanks to modern science, a woman whose name might have otherwise been lost to time is now known to the entire world because of these breakthroughs. In the coming years, further chemical analysis may reveal even more about her diet, illnesses, or genetic links to her family. Bakht-horn Nekhti is not just an ambassador of Egyptian civilization, but a testament to humanity's eternal desire to be remembered and live on beyond death.